Girl. Sorry. Okay. You guys may have heard that the internet isn't very good for us, especially in this generation. Going back to some history, the internet that we use today was standardized in 1982. In the last 3 decades, the internet has been had a profound effect on every area in modern life and has become a central part of our lives today. Despite this, not everyone is convinced that the internet is good for us. The internet started flourishing in the year 2000, and different websites started to be created, and they were spreading with the intention of a faster and more convenient world. And convenience doesn't make things easy. The internet does diminish our intelligence, and it diminishes 3 types of our intelligence: social, emotional, and actual. First, let's go ahead and take a look at how the internet diminishes our social intelligence. Our language today has decreased and has been dumbed down because of the internet. This generation has such a large vocabulary of words from the dictionary that we don't even use today, even though we should. There are over 1 million words in just the English language itself, and this generation has set itself apart from all the words created. We find ourselves searching for resources on the internet. We use terms such as LOL and OMG as our language, which just allows us to expand on our thoughts through our vocabulary. Shortening words into acronyms or abbreviations doesn't allow our brains to expand. Instead, it makes it complicated and allows us not to think as hard as we should. Language isn't technology, but technology most definitely influences our language. This isn't a good thing because we start to depend and rely on the internet for everything. The internet turns off our thought process and working part in our brain and causes us to sit back and relax so that we can let the internet take care of any worries and thoughts. Without that working part in our brain and our thought process, we become unaware of the surroundings and place ourselves into a situation of laziness. Our technology has secluded us into our own world when we use the internet, and we start to lose our social skills. We are learning only to speak to others through text and Facebook messaging rather than in-person, face-to-face confrontation, or even talking over the phone. We are so open and comfortable speaking to others in text rather than in person. We're so open and comfortable speaking. A staff member at Bingham High School wrote, "Actually hearing someone's voice and making eye contact is starting to become a thing of the past." When we are texting, we're able to think for as long as we want before we actually text back. But when we're in person, we get nervous, and our personality and character actually shows, and that's obviously a good thing. We tighten up and get nervous because we don't want to say the wrong thing, even though, like I said, it shows our personality and our character. And we lose those social skills that are needed because we are constantly reading our Facebook wall posts and text messages that usually don't contain deep conversations, and we aren't talking in person, showing our character and personality. The personality that we see when we are talking to people is through their body language and expressions. And when we're on the web, that's not really able to be shown. People who use the web can lose their focus on where their social skills actually do start to diminish. Next, we see how the internet is destroying our emotional intelligence. In our social skills, we find emotions such as sympathy, empathy, excitement, etc. The internet destroys our social skills, therefore we're losing those emotions. It's very difficult to show and receive certain emotions through social media. As mentioned before, we're secluded to the internet world, causing laziness. And from this, we can see that our generation is growing up in a world that bases everything off the internet. Our emotions are based off the internet. We get to decide what emoticon to put down, whether we are actually feeling that way or not. We're also able to tell the difference in tones and personality through we aren't able to show our tones and personality through a social media website. We can't see body language or facial expression, which are 2 very important things, as I said, when it comes to displaying emotion through our personality and character. It has been said that meaningful relationships are never going to develop over a computer screen. Because we can't express our emotions through the web, we are losing those relationships that we need most in our life. Our excessive use of the internet can be impolite to the people around us. We are not only confusing the peer on the other side of the computer screen from our messages, but we're being ill-mannered toward the people around us. And this is because we're using the internet when being spoke to or at an important event. We are so caught up in the web that we're ignoring the people around us, and we're lacking those emotions from the internet. Finally, we see how the internet diminishes our actual intelligence. Our memorization skills are very important when it comes to tests, relationships, and work. A little science lesson, the connection between our short-term memory and long-term memory is called our working memory, and we can only transfer a small amount of our short-term memory to our long-term memory at one time. The internet causes us to look at so many things at once and makes us look at all the distractions, including ads, hyperlinks, side articles, notifications, etc. Because of this, our working memory can only take so many things from our short-term memory at a time to put it into our long-term memory. All these distractions are being put into our short-term memory, and the information in the short-term memory becomes lost in the process, and we forget about it. A video called How the Internet is Changing Your Brain states the information and experience that gets encoded into our long-term memory is the basis of our unique intelligence. Our long-term memory is what holds our creativity, original thought, social skills, and our knowledge. When we overload our short-term memory from the internet, we are wasting away our creativity, originality, social skills, and our knowledge that could have been stored into our long-term memory. We find ourselves searching for resources on the internet when we have a plethora without it. The internet brings us into a world of unintelligence. The internet diminishes our social, emotional, and actual intelligence. We're losing this intelligence through being sucked into the world of the internet. And this generation's brain can't hold so much information at one time to build on the knowledge we should have because of the internet. From the year 2000, our minds have formed an addiction to the internet, and we can't become sober of it. The internet will only become larger and more advanced in the future generations to come, and unfortunately there's nothing we can really do to stop that from happening. The more we use the internet, the less knowledge we have to gain, and that's a fact. Our brains are slowly decaying into a low intelligent death from the internet. Thank you.
No, you can sit down. You don't. It makes you feel too much like a target then when I start talking. That's just weird.
Doctor, need time?
No, thank you. I've got the time also. I just can't give the time signals while I'm taking notes. So, if I need it, I will ask. Sometimes I do forget.
Oh no, you can keep that.
All right, Bethany. I think there are a couple of things that start off pretty well with the speech. You've got nice background introduction that you're talking about. It is taking a while, and that's one of the reasons that I think you end up going overtime, because you do, spend a lot of time kind of reviewing the history of the internet and going into those sorts of issues. When you got to the proposition, I could tell what the proposition was, but you need to highlight it a little bit more, because if it's not all that distinct from what the other things that you were saying at that particular point. I was listening for it. Casual listeners might not be, and so you don't be shy about saying, having established what the subject is, the proposition, the argument that I want to make is, that way people know. Oral arguments are different than written arguments, and so you have to kind of spoon feed us a little bit on that. I thought you did a good job, though, previewing the supporting points, so it's well structured, we know where you're going, and during the presentation you signposted on those things pretty well. You explain your concepts and the way you're trying to reason pretty well. The support for it is where there's a problem. I heard a couple of examples that don't really go very far, LOL and OMG. I had a quote from a high school staff member, and I had a quote from a video, and then there's a quote that's unattributed. It's been said, I don't know by who and whether or not to believe them, And that's the basic proof that you have in your argument. So you're saying all these things and you believe them to be true. You need to convince us that they're true, and so we need some reason to believe that.
So should all of my quotes be oral citations?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It needs to be in the speech because nobody else except the person who's doing the refutation is going to see your outline. So we got to hear what those arguments are.
Okay.
Yeah, it's missing the evidence in the argument. That's the problem. And I don't know, some of your points might very well have been summaries of what somebody else has said and their authority, but without attributing it to those folks, then all we have is that this is your conclusion on these particular points. And I'm not saying that they're unreasonable. I'm not saying that that you're not a trustworthy person. But when you say, for instance, that we're losing the ability to use language because we use acronyms, I'm thinking, don't acronyms just expand the language by giving us additional ways of saying those things? Where's the proof that people have stopped saying something because they use an acronym? All right, they use the acronyms to shorten the text messages, for instance. Is there any evidence that suggests that we have fewer conversations because we do texting? That's what's missing in the speech. Is there something that says that we have we spend less time in conversation, we have fewer regular interpersonal relationships as opposed to virtual relationships as a consequence of access to the internet? That's the kind of stuff that we need to have to support your argument, and that's kind of what's missing. All right, thank you.